I returned early from my weekend getaway with friends to surprise my husband, only to overhear a devastating phone conversation. This marriage is a total disaster, man. Every morning I wake up wishing I'd chosen differently. If it weren't for her family's wealth, I'd have left ages ago. We'd just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. Shocked, I slipped out quietly and came back at my planned time, greeting him with a kiss as if nothing had happened. 5 days later, he bombarded my phone with 27 calls in a single hour, likely realizing I'd overheard him. I'm at a loss for where to start. My hands are trembling as I type this on my phone. I've rewritten this post at least 7 times, deleting each draft. Right now, everyone in the house is asleep, and I'm locked in the bathroom, the shower running to mask my sobs so Caleb doesn't hear me. Caleb and I have been married for 3 years. He always stood out as authentic compared to the shallow guys I met through my family's social circle. My family is well off, not billionaire level, but comfortable enough that I've never stressed about money. Caleb, on the other hand, grew up middle class. Just last weekend, we renewed our vows in an intimate ceremony with our closest loved ones. He teared up while reciting his vows, calling me his greatest blessing. I believed every word. I was on a girls' trip to Nashville with my 3 college besties, a trip we'd planned for months. We had spa days, vineyard visits, and a night at that trendy rooftop bar everyone's raving about on social media. But on day 2, Emma got sick from some questionable fried chicken, and Lauren had to deal with a work crisis remotely. The trip fell apart, so we called it quits early. I saw it as a chance to surprise Caleb. He's always saying he misses me when I'm away, sending those pouty wish-you-were-here selfies from our living room. So, I caught an early flight, grabbed his favorite tacos from a local spot, and picked up that artisanal beer he loves. I was thrilled imagining his reaction. I entered through the garage to keep the surprise, our house's quirky layout hiding the living room from the front door. I heard Caleb's voice upstairs in his gaming den, clearly on a call since no one else was home. I set the food down and tiptoed upstairs, planning to jump out mid-conversation. Then I heard it. This marriage is a total disaster, man. Every morning I wake up wishing I'd chosen differently. I froze mid-step, my heart pounding. I waited for a laugh, hoping it was a joke, but there was no laugh. If it weren't for her family's wealth, I'd have left ages ago. The only upside is I don't stress about bills anymore. My heart shattered as I stood there, paralyzed. That vow renewal last weekend? Absolute agony, dude. Had to fake all that sappy nonsense while her family ate it up. I've gotten pretty good at acting, though. Award-worthy. He chuckled, a cold, cruel sound. But it's worth it for the lifestyle, right? Her dad's talking about looping me into the family company soon. Once I'm set there, I'll have freedom. More than just being the rich wife's husband. The rich wife. That's what he calls me behind my back. 3 years of marriage, and I'm just a paycheck to him. Somehow, I crept back downstairs, grabbed the tacos and beer, and left. I sat in my car in a parking lot for nearly 2 hours, crying until my makeup was a mess. An elderly woman tapped on my window, asking if I was okay. I lied and said my cat had died, one of many lies I'd tell that day. I returned the food, claiming my husband was unwell, and texted my friends that I'd checked into an airport hotel to catch up on work before flying back to Nashville. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying every moment of our relationship through this new, painful lens. The times he insisted on paying for cheap dinners, his hesitation to let me help with his debts until I pushed, his big dreams that only materialized when my dad offered connections, all of it felt tainted now. His parents gave us a carved wooden plaque for our anniversary that reads, "Where your journey begins." This morning, I stared at it over coffee, thinking we were starting a new chapter. Instead, our marriage was just a business deal to Caleb. I went back to Nashville, pretending everything was fine with my friends, though I was breaking inside and probably drank too much wine each night. When I returned home as scheduled, I kissed the man who called our marriage a disaster and acted like nothing was wrong. For 5 days, I've lived this facade, sleeping next to someone who regrets me every morning, questioning what was real and what was part of his award-worthy act. I've checked our accounts and noticed odd withdrawals. 150 here, 250 there, always just below the threshold we agreed required discussion. Is he stashing money to leave? Is there someone else? Does another woman know I'm just the rich wife? Do they mock me together? I haven't told anyone, not my friends, not my family, especially not my family. My dad loves Caleb, calling him the son he never had. It would crush him to know Caleb sees him as a stepping stone. I've started making subtle moves, though. Yesterday, I accidentally left my private bank account details open on my laptop. The account he can't touch. This morning, I casually mentioned that my dad might scale back his business due to market concerns. I've been staying late at work, acting slightly distant, and taking more calls privately. Our bathroom faucet has been dripping for weeks, and Caleb kept promising to fix it. Last night, I hired a plumber without telling him. When the guy showed up, Caleb looked thrown off. I just said, "You seem tied up with other stuff." The plumber charged $90 for a quick fix, and I could see Caleb mentally tallying the wasted money. My subtle changes are working. Caleb's on edge. This afternoon, while I was out shopping, he called 27 times in an hour. When I called back, he was frantic, asking if I was okay, if I was upset, if something was wrong with my family. I played it calm, saying my phone was in my bag while I was at the store, asking why he'd think anything was wrong. His silence spoke volumes. So here I am, typing this in the bathroom with the shower running, trying to plan my next steps. I know I need to confront him, but I want to be strategic. Our finances are intertwined. My mistake. My name's on the mortgage, but he's on the deed. Everything's complicated. Part of me wants to scream what I heard in his face, but another part wants to play the long game. What if I pull back emotionally while quietly securing my finances? What if I document everything? What if I let him think everything's fine until it's not? For him. That's my plan for now. He's lied to me for 3 years. I can manage a few weeks of the same. I need to go. The hot water's probably low, and Caleb will wonder why I've been in here for 45 minutes. I'll go out, kiss my husband goodnight, and lie next to him while plotting my exit. The first step I took was contacting my private bank, the one Caleb can't access, and bolstering its security. I updated all passwords, added verbal authentication questions, and instructed them to discuss my account only with me. Then I began quietly transferring funds from our shared accounts to my personal one. Nothing too obvious, just small amounts daily to avoid suspicion. Is that unethical? Perhaps. But learning your husband is a deceitful opportunist shifts your view on what's fair. The weekend getaway Caleb proposed? I agreed to it, but suggested we stay at my family's modest lakeside cabin instead of the upscale resort he was eyeing. His expression was priceless. He quickly masked it with a "whatever you want, sweetheart," but I caught that flicker of frustration. Suddenly, so much is clicking into place. How he always pushes for lavish choices when he thinks my family will foot the bill, but turns frugal when it's our money. The cabin trip revealed more than I anticipated. The Wi-Fi there is spotty, and Caleb spent most of the weekend glued to his phone, grumbling about the weak signal. He kept wandering to the dock's edge, where you might catch a single bar. Curious, I followed him silently one time and overheard him complaining to someone about being stuck in the middle of nowhere and promising to make it up to them when he got back. Who was he talking to? And what was he planning to make up for? When we returned home Sunday night, he said he needed to dash to Target for work supplies. He was gone for nearly 3 hours. For Target, which is a 15-minute drive. Later, I checked our joint credit card app, no Target charges, but a $75 tab from a bar across town. During the trip, I casually mentioned that my dad was thinking of retiring early due to health issues, a complete fabrication, and might scale back his business ventures. Caleb spent the next hour probing about Dad's plans, the family trusts, and our financial future, barely mentioning the supposed health concerns. It was like watching him drop his facade without realizing it. I've also been digging into our financial records, and what I found turned my stomach. Over 3 years, Caleb has siphoned nearly $19,000 from our joint accounts for vague business expenses and investments that never materialized. There's a pattern of large withdrawals before trips to his hometown, hinting he's funding something or someone there that I'm unaware of. Last week, while he was at the gym, I rummaged through his nightstand, something I never imagined doing. I found a cheap burner phone from a discount store, password protected, but Caleb, true to form, had jotted the code on a sticky note attached to it. The phone had one contact saved, M. Dozens of texts discussed meetups and money, with references to a long-term strategy and sticking to the plan. One message from 3 months ago read, "Just 2 more years, and we're golden." 2 years until what? I snapped photos of everything and put the phone back exactly as I found it. The mind games are the strangest part. I've been tweaking my behavior, being slightly less warm, taking more calls in private, casually mentioning chats with our family attorney. Nothing confrontational, just off enough to unsettle him. And it's working. 2 nights ago, he went through my wardrobe while I was showering. I know because my sneakers were out of order. I'm meticulous about my shoes. I didn't call it out, just fixed them while he pretended to scroll on his phone from the bed. Yesterday, I caught him snooping through my tablet's search history while I was cooking dinner. I deliberately left searches like how to spot a cheating spouse and separate accounts in marriage for him to find. When I walked in, he tossed the tablet aside and babbled about loving the curry I was making, even though it was clearly pasta. Our fridge has been making an odd humming noise for months, and Caleb always promised to fix it. Yesterday, I suggested replacing it, and he dove into repair mode, spending hours tinkering. Suddenly, all the chores he's ignored for months, the creaky bedroom door, the flickering patio light, the shaky dining table, are getting done. It's like he's scrambling to prove his worth. I've started meeting my college friend Sarah for lunch weekly. She's the only one I've confided in, and she's gone from shocked to furious to my partner in crime. She helped me create a secret email account Caleb doesn't know about and urged me to document everything. Last Tuesday, I was working late at a client meeting. Really, I was at a coffee shop browsing forums about surviving betrayal and taking notes. Caleb showed up unannounced with dinner, something he's never done in 3 years. He claimed he missed me but spent the meal quizzing me about a call he overheard with Sarah, where I mentioned major changes. It was about redecorating our spare room, but he doesn't know that. The 27 calls incident I mentioned last time? I now know what set it off. That morning, I'd left bank statements on my desk highlighting his withdrawals over the past year. I didn't confront him, just left them out. When I got home, the papers had been moved. He'd seen them, panicked, and that's why he blew up my phone during my meetings. When I finally called back after the 27th call, our exchange went like this. Me. Hey, what's the crisis? My phone was in my bag during meetings. Caleb, breathing unevenly. No crisis, just, are you okay? Are we okay? You've been acting off since Nashville. Me. Off how? Caleb. I don't know. Distant? You're taking private calls and you mentioned your dad rethinking his business. I'm worried about you. Notice how he sandwiched concern about my dad's business between fake worry for me? Classic Caleb, a pattern I never saw before. Me. I'm fine, just swamped with work. Why would anything be wrong? The pause was so long, I thought he'd hung up. Caleb. No reason. I just love you, that's all. Me. Love you too. The hardest lie I've ever told. After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried for nearly an hour, not from sadness about the marriage ending, but from grieving the relationship I thought was real. The Caleb I loved was a fiction, played by a man who sees me as a walking bank account. Last night, he suggested another vow renewal for family members who missed the first one. When I asked why the rush after renewing 2 weeks ago, he mumbled about wanting to celebrate our love with everyone. Translation: he's terrified his meal ticket is slipping and wants to lock in my family's approval. I smiled and said, maybe next year. His relief was obvious. What Caleb doesn't know is that I've consulted a lawyer, not our family attorney, but one Sarah recommended, outside our social circle. I have a meeting next week to explore my options. I've documented the financial irregularities and moved my key personal documents and family keepsakes to Sarah's place, under the guise of a photo shoot for her blog. Another lie, but I learned from the best. This morning, something odd happened. As I was getting ready for work, Caleb hugged me from behind in the bathroom, tears streaming down his face. He said he felt like he was losing me and didn't know why. For a moment, I nearly lost it and confronted him, but then I remembered his laughter about his award-worthy act. I patted his shoulder, said work was just hectic, and assured him everything was fine. His tears vanished quickly when I mentioned possibly canceling our fancy New York trip next month, the one at the boutique hotel his influencer buddy hyped up. Funny how his emotional breakdown faded when a luxury perk was at risk. The confrontation is near. I'm almost ready. But I want him to squirm a bit longer, to feel the ground shift without knowing why. I want him to taste a sliver of the betrayal and instability I've endured. Is that vindictive? Maybe. But when someone dismantles your entire world, a little spite feels justified. After learning Caleb was secretly draining our accounts and only staying with me for my family's wealth, I spent weeks discreetly collecting evidence and crafting my escape plan. I intended to confront him only when everything was perfectly aligned, but life had other ideas. Remember that dinner at my parents' house Caleb was so keen on? We went last weekend, and it was revealing. Caleb was in full charm mode, praising my mom's new drapes, quizzing my dad about his tennis game, and even offering to help my sister set up her new sound system. To an outsider, he was the ideal son-in-law. But with my new perspective, I could see the scheming behind every move. At dinner, Caleb casually brought up looking into real estate in my parents' neighborhood. My dad, ever enthusiastic, mentioned, that property values there could jump 25% in the next few years. Caleb's face practically glowed. I'm not kidding. It was like he'd won the lottery. Later that night, I caught him on our tablet browsing listings far beyond our budget. When I asked how we could afford them, he grinned and said my dad had hinted at helping with the deposit. My dad had said no such thing. The next day, I met with the attorney Sarah recommended. She was fantastic, straightforward, empathetic, and meticulous. She clarified what I'm entitled to and what Caleb might try to claim. The good news? Our prenup offers some safeguards, though not as many as I'd hoped. The better news? The financial audit uncovered a pattern of deceit that could potentially weaken parts of the prenup. While I was with the lawyer, Caleb was apparently unraveling at home. That morning, I'd left my laptop open to a tab showing flights to my aunt's house in Oregon, part of my exit planning. When I got back, Caleb had prepared an extravagant dinner with all my favorites. Candles, wine, the whole deal. He was trying so hard to be charming, but there was a frantic edge to it. His hands trembled as he poured the wine. During the meal, he kept tossing out odd remarks about how much he cherishes our life, how grateful he is for me, not my family, and how he's never been happier. It was like watching an actor stumble through an unrehearsed script. Then came the shocker. He suggested we start trying for a baby, immediately. This from the guy who's spent 3 years dodging family plans with endless excuses. I nearly spat out my wine. When I asked why the sudden shift, Caleb launched into a speech about realizing what truly matters and being ready for the next chapter of our life together. His eyes even welled up. Award-worthy performance, truly. I smiled and said, "That's funny because I've been reflecting on our future too." The hope in his eyes was almost pitiful. I went on. "Actually, I've been thinking a lot about our relationship since I got back from Nashville." The hope faded, replaced by something like dread. He grabbed his wine glass so fast he nearly tipped it over. He asked what I meant. That's when I decided to start showing my hand. Not everything, but enough to make him sweat. I mentioned I'd been pondering honesty in relationships, about what people truly want versus what they claim. Caleb's face went so white I thought he might faint. He asked what I was getting at. Instead of answering directly, I asked if he recalled his vow renewal speech where he said meeting me was his greatest gift. He nodded, forcing a smile that looked more like a wince. I asked if he meant it. "Of course," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. "Every word?" I gently pulled my hand back. "That's curious, because I could have sworn I heard you tell Mark that the vow renewal was agonizing and you had to fake all that romantic nonsense for my family." His face went ashen. His mouth opened and shut, but no words came out. When he finally tried to speak, I pressed on. "Or maybe I misheard. Maybe you didn't call our marriage a disaster or say you wake up regretting it every day. Maybe I imagined you saying the only upside is my family's wealth." Caleb knocked over his wine glass, red liquid spilling across our cream tablecloth. He didn't even try to clean it. He just stared, horrified. When he asked when I'd heard it, I said, "When I came home early from Nashville to surprise you. Surprise, honey." He started stammering that I'd misunderstood, his voice slipping into that patronizing tone he uses when he thinks I'm overreacting. "I was just blowing off steam to Mark about a tough moment. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're stressed." "A tough moment?" I echoed. "So, was it a misunderstanding when you called me the rich wife? Or when you said you're only staying until you're set enough to have options?" His face turned ghostly. He hadn't realized how much I'd overheard. He mumbled that it was all out of context. "Then please, Caleb, explain the context where saying our marriage is a disaster and you're only here for money makes sense." He couldn't. Instead, he pivoted to teary apologies, claiming he was in a personal crisis when I overheard him, that he didn't mean it, that he loves me more than anything. I sat there, seeing his act with fresh eyes. The tender looks, heartfelt promises, vulnerable moments. They now felt like calculated steps in a long scheme. "Are you leaving me?" he finally asked. "I haven't decided." I lied. I'd made my choice, but he didn't need to know yet. What followed was 2 weeks of relentless, emotional manipulation. Caleb went all out, daily flowers to my office with increasingly frantic notes, calling my parents to say he was worried about my sudden change, suggesting couples counseling, ironic from someone who called our marriage a nightmare. He even contacted Sarah, begging her to talk sense into me. The most telling part? During his campaign to save our marriage, he never once mentioned my family's finances. It was like he was deliberately sidestepping the very thing that drove him all along. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward with my plan. I transferred the last of our joint account funds to my secure personal accounts. I met with my family's financial planner to ensure Caleb couldn't touch any family assets. I packed essentials and heirlooms and stored them in a unit Caleb doesn't know about. I also had a heart-wrenching talk with my parents, one of the hardest things I've ever done. My dad sees Caleb as the son he never had, and my mom loved him for making me happy. Telling them their cherished son-in-law was a fraud who only wanted their wealth and connections devastated them. Dad wanted to confront Caleb immediately, but I persuaded them to follow my lead a little longer. Our washing machine broke down 3 days ago. Perfect timing, right? Caleb quickly offered to call a repair service. Odd, since he usually gripes about repair costs. I suggested buying a new one, and he agreed without even asking the cost. He's desperate to seem unbothered by money now. Last night, We went to a dinner party at my friend Emma's new place. Caleb has always found Emma a bit overwhelming, his words, with her bold personality and blunt opinions. But last night, he was all over her, laughing at her jokes, even praising her Instagram dance videos he once called cringe for her age. Halfway through dinner, Emma's boyfriend Jake, who knows nothing about my situation, brought up a news story about a man who conned his rich wife for years. Everyone chuckled about how foolish the guy was to think he'd get away with it. Everyone except Caleb, who suddenly became very focused on his roasted vegetables. When Jake asked his opinion, Caleb muttered something about relationships not always being what they seem. The table went silent. I felt Emma's confused glance, but I just smiled and asked her to pass the pepper. On the drive home, Caleb was unusually quiet. In the garage, he turned to me with a pleading look and asked if things were really okay between us. I said I didn't know what he meant. He said he'd felt something was off for weeks and couldn't shake the sense that something was deeply wrong. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Maybe check your conscience if you're feeling something's off." He recoiled like I'd struck him. This morning, I found him flipping through our wedding album, something he hasn't touched in years. He said he was feeling sentimental, but the fear in his eyes told another story. He's searching for hints about what I know and what I'm planning. I've arranged a meeting with my parents and our family's financial advisor tomorrow. Caleb thinks it's about routine trust matters, but it's to formally remove him as a beneficiary from several accounts and discuss our impending divorce. I've asked my parents to act normal until after the meeting. I'm not even angry anymore, just exhausted. Exhausted from the charade, from watching him scramble to keep up his act, from pretending I don't know our marriage was a transaction to him. Tonight, Caleb suggested a second honeymoon to reconnect. Caleb showed me photos of a lavish resort in Fiji on his phone, raving about private villas and turquoise lagoons. The old me would have been ecstatic. The new me just wondered how much of my family's wealth he planned to burn on this desperate ploy. I smiled and said it sounded wonderful, but suggested we discuss it after tomorrow's meeting with my parents. The relief on his face was instant. He clearly thinks he still has time to patch things up. He doesn't know that by this time tomorrow, his carefully built facade will be in ruins. The meeting with my parents and the financial advisor is set for 10 a.m. By 11, he'll know I've been aware of everything for weeks. By noon, he'll face the reality that his free ride has not only ended, but is speeding backward. Caleb just texted, asking if I want Thai takeout tonight, says he wants to spoil me before our big financial meeting tomorrow. If only he knew. Hey, Reddit community. I want to start by thanking every one of you who supported me through this ordeal. Your comments, messages, and guidance gave me strength when I felt like I was sinking. I promised a final update when everything was resolved, so here it is, the end of my story. The meeting with my parents and the financial advisor, it went exactly as planned. And Caleb's expression when he realized what was happening is something I'll treasure forever. We gathered in my dad's study, me, Caleb, my parents, and Ms. Thompson, our family's financial advisor since I was young. Caleb was all charm, likely thinking this was his moment to secure his place in the family's finances. Dad opened by asking if Caleb had anything to share before we started. Caleb looked puzzled but said no, everything was fine. Dad nodded and produced a folder with records of Caleb's secret withdrawals. From our joint account, screenshots of texts to M about his long-term strategy, and the clincher, a transcript of the call I overheard where he called our marriage a disaster. You should have seen Caleb's face. It was like watching his world crumble in slow motion. He went from confused to stunned to frantic to scheming in about 10 seconds. He immediately claimed it was a misunderstanding, that he'd been in a dark place and said things he didn't mean. Mom, who'd been quietly fuming since I told her the truth, finally snapped. She called him a manipulative leech and said she'd never misjudged someone so badly. Caleb tried to win her over, insisting they'd always had a unique connection and that she knew the real him. Mom just scoffed and asked which real him she knew, the one who called his marriage a nightmare or the one who teared up at our vow renewal. The meeting ended with Ms. Thompson explaining that Caleb had been removed from all family accounts, trusts, and business interests. Dad told him divorce papers would be delivered that afternoon and that he had 24 hours to clear his belongings from our house. Caleb's final move was turning to me, eyes brimming with tears. Real tears? The man deserves an Oscar. And asking if I was really going to discard 3 years of marriage over one foolish conversation. I looked him in the eyes and said I wasn't discarding anything he'd already done, that when he saw me as nothing but a paycheck. The divorce process was surprisingly swift. When one side has overwhelming proof of fraudulent intent and access to top-tier lawyers, things move fast. Caleb initially fought, demanding half of everything, including future stakes in my family's business. His first counteroffer was so absurd even his lawyer seemed embarrassed, but his case collapsed when my team presented the evidence. The unexplained withdrawals, the secret accounts we'd uncovered, and most damning, the recordings of him admitting he married me for money. In the end, he got far less than he wanted, though still more than I think he deserved. The most satisfying moment came at our final mediation. Caleb's lawyer claimed his significant contributions to my career and my family's business. My attorney simply played the recording of Caleb telling Mark that being my husband was his ticket to wealth and calling me the rich wife. The look on Caleb's face when his own words crushed his leverage was unforgettable. Beyond the legal battles, these past 6 months have been an emotional whirlwind. The first few weeks after the confrontation were brutal. I swung between fury, sorrow, shame, and crippling self-doubt. How could I have been so blind? How did I miss the red flags? My therapist's best decision ever helped me see that Caleb's deception worked, not because I was gullible, but because he was a skilled manipulator. She taught me that trusting someone isn't a flaw. Betraying that trust is the failure, not offering it. I moved out of our house before it sold. Too many memories were tainted by the knowledge that Caleb was acting, not loving, there. I found a cozy downtown apartment, smaller than our house but entirely mine, decorated to my taste without catering to anyone else. The first night there hit me hard. I'd been so caught up in logistics, setting up utilities, updating my address, organizing my kitchen tools that I wasn't ready for the emotional weight. I've been rediscovering parts of myself that faded during our marriage. Caleb used to say my laugh was too boisterous in public. Last week, I cackled at a meme in a coffee shop line and didn't even think to say sorry. Small victories, right? My bond with my parents has grown stronger through this. Dad shocked me with an apology, saying he feared our wealth made me a target and that he should have better prepared me for people who'd see me as a means to an end. It was the most open conversation we've ever had. Mom's gone into protective mode, texting me daily and sending articles like 10 red flags he's after your wealth and spotting a fortune hunter. It's a bit over the top, but I love her for it. She's already tried setting me up on 3 blind dates with financially stable guys she's vetted. I've turned them down. I'm nowhere near ready to date, but her heart's in the right place. My friends, especially Sarah and Emma, have been amazing, showing up in ways I can never repay. Lauren, sadly, took Caleb's side at first. They were friends before we met, and she bought his story. It hurt, but I've let it go. The oddest part has been encountering mutual friends who don't know the full story. Last week, I ran into Caleb's friend Mark, the one from the phone call at a store. He gave an awkward half-wave, then got really absorbed in dish soap. I just smiled and moved on. Later, I caught him watching me from the parking lot as I loaded my car. Clearly, Caleb fed him a version of events that paints me as the bad guy. I don't have the energy to care what his buddies think anymore. Last month, Caleb showed up at my apartment unannounced, saying he wanted to talk and explain himself. I told him he'd had 3 years to be truthful, and I wasn't interested in his new script. He tried to give me a letter, which I refused. He left it in my mailbox anyway. I almost burned it unread, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a weird blend of apology and excuses, claiming he'd come to love me despite his original motives, that he regretted his words to Mark, that he missed our life together. I read it once, then tossed it in the shredder without replying. His words mean nothing now. According to Sarah's cousin, who works at a high-end bistro downtown, Caleb is now dating the daughter of one of my dad's business partners. She's been warned, but she thinks Caleb is misunderstood, and that I must have done something to cause his behavior. Some people have to learn the hard way, I guess. I've gotten into baking, something Caleb always controlled in our marriage. Last night, I made a decent blueberry scone. Actually, edible. Progress. Do I still have rough days? Definitely. Some mornings I'm livid that I gave 3 years to someone who saw me as a bank account. Sometimes I worry about trusting anyone romantically again. Sometimes I replay moments, searching for clues I missed. The divorce was finalized last month, 47 days faster than the county average. The house sold quickly, and I used my share to clear some old student loans and invest the rest. Caleb tried claiming emotional distress and reputational damage in our final hearing, but those were dismissed almost instantly. Last week, Mom sent me a social media post of Caleb at a charity event with his new girlfriend. My first reaction wasn't envy or anger. It was relief. Relief that he's someone else's burden now. Relief that I no longer have to question if every smile, kind word, or gesture is part of a calculated act to tap into my family's wealth. The rich wife is gone. Long lay of just plain Emma. Oh, and that burner phone with the mysterious contact, M? Turns out M stands for Melissa. Caleb,